All right, Vas. So just delving a little more into the Side Mount Essentials course and the daily structure.
Sure.
Obviously, we target this now the same way. We've had a lot of great feedback from other
Yes.
instructors around the world using the instructor series, commenting on how systematic and how well it kind of works. We knew it worked well because of the customers we had through it.
Sure.
Now, day one, we were both agreeing we always keep this definitely for equipment configuration, see where they're at,
Yes.
especially in terms of buoyancy, finning techniques. The next day, we're kind of delving more into the control line and actually getting them static in the water
Yep.
and really working on a lot of the core skills they need and side mount skills, right? Then what I've traditionally done is on day three, I really want to test them as a team.
Yes.
And usually I take them to the Carwella shipwreck and they have to go through a reasonably complex dive plan in terms of staying in position, dealing with potential current, diving to a depth with possible narcosis, making a team ascent together, monitoring the gas, being aware, telling us, well, so it goes on the list.
Yep.
Now, you had quite an interesting approach to that. And I noticed that if you had students that you felt weren't quite ready yet to do day three like that,
Sure.
you were kind of moving that on to another day. And you brought in something else, didn't you, for day three?
Yeah, I mean, what I tend to find is that, being 100% linear isn't always the answer. You have to be a bit prescriptive. And by that, I mean, you've almost got to deliver at the level and at the right time that people are there for. So, day one gives you a pretty good idea of what people have got as a basic set. And then day two gives you an idea of how well they can perform after some additional instruction. And it was really about then using that to say, well, do I think this team of divers can now go and make that kind of dive? Now, if they were being guided on that dive, then quite likely they would be able to make it. But if you're now expecting them to do the compass work, stay together, head out into the blue, monitor the gas, monitor the depth, it can be a lot at that moment in the week that you've got with them. So what I found was that rather than have people do that dive, let's say, not very well, suboptimally, what I found was better was to give them like a stepping stone onto that dive.
Yeah.
So I would take what we might normally do on day 4 and bring that ahead so that it made the kind of progression a little bit more smoother. I didn't feel that we had this kind of big jump for some people.
Yeah.
So I know that all the things that they need to do for the dive we've in theory covered on day 2. Day 3 now is to show, okay, well, let's now do that on a real dive site. There isn't going to be a control line for the ascent portion or the descent portion. Yes, we're going to do the stuff when we come back on a control setup, but show me what you're going to do on the shipwreck in a more controlled setting. So we'll make the dive a little bit smaller. We'll take some of the variables away. We'll take maybe the swimming in the blue out of it, maybe the compass swim out of it. And we'll do just a little bit of work, maybe to a slightly shallower depth as well. So if we're targeting, let's say, a 35-meter dive, well, let's scale that back to maybe 25. Let's have an assessment of the narcosis. Let's have an assessment of, you generally see a lot of people going over a little bit of call it a cliff, if you like, where their performance at depth is noticeably different from the performance in the shallower part. So what I found was that I could still introduce the same types of testing, the same types of skills, but give a more controlled setting before now you ask them to go and make that bigger dive. So they've already had really a dress rehearsal was the way that I looked at it.
And this, I figured, because I've recently assisted and shadowed an entire course that you were running, and I kept quiet in the background, and mainly my job was to video everything happening. And this was brilliant, actually, from a different perspective. I really could see things differently. And I know we've been discussing the videos.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, we even got a different perception, or you did, because rather than you be your camera close up, seeing the action, you kind of get in a backseat row view, right, where you can see everything unfolding. And the students performed a little better than we even thought they were close up, right?
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, that was a little bit interesting for me to see the fact that when you're working 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 with people, and yes, you're right, you need to be close enough for different reasons at different times. You don't always get to see, okay, well, how are they moving together? What's one doing while the other one's doing something?
Sure.
And even if you're looking square on while they're, let's say, doing the reg switch, well, you can't always see maybe what the fins are doing. Yes, they will occasionally drop out and you'll catch them.
Yeah.
But really coming out of the way and taking a look from another angle, that was really interesting, because you're quite right. What you see here isn't the whole story some of the time. And yes, and what I actually wanted to do was take some of that other footage to show to the guys that, yeah, they've actually performed differently or in a much better way.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be a positive reinforcement. So one of the things that I'm going to implement is actually leaving people, creating a little bit more distance.
Sure.
And while they're working, they don't need supervision at all times. I mean, these are certified divers after all. They're a buddy pair. We don't have necessarily a safety concern. So yeah, actually adding those other angles for me is going to be brilliant.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can also get them one side of the line, working on a cookie, using each other as a reference point.
Absolutely.
And just get them doing one-handed reg switches, helicopter turns, whatever it might be. And they're kind of assessing each other, right?
Yes.
And then you're getting the overall view. I mean, having spent a whole week doing that, I'm definitely going to be doing more distance videoing myself as well.
Yes, yeah.
So that was a big eye-opener.
Yeah, I mean, it just creates that bigger picture, really.
Yeah. I was really a fan, actually, of how you did the switch with these two guys recently. Because rather than do day 3 the traditional way I've been doing it, you actually switched 4 and 3 around, give them the chance to make that ascent together. And for those guys, it actually worked really well, because I think it would have been a bit too much of an ask to ask for the entire complex dive plan first.
Yes.
Yeah, we would have seen a lot of errors and issues, and yeah, we could have drilled that in, but there becomes a point, doesn't it, where is it just making a dive hard for the sake of being hard for somebody when they're not quite necessarily ready for that in their training? Or do you be a bit more clever and actually adapt it more? So this is definitely something that I liked about what you did on the course, and it's something that I think we can help other instructors to do as well, which is to understand that every person coming in may learn differently, and you should never be too rigid with a structure. You know, you've definitely got to play it to their strengths and weaknesses, and especially leaving it on a high as well. You know, you don't want to sugarcoat something for somebody.
Sure.
Tell them they did well when they didn't do well. But you certainly want to ensure that underwater, they're having certain things happen which are good, and they're going to stick with them. Because what we don't want is somebody staying up that whole night, worried about the next day.
Yes.
Because the lack of sleep now is going to affect the next day, we know that. And it's just their perception a lot of the time is not actually true, is it? I mean, they're not as accurate as we are with it.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point really about trying to understand what their thought process is, you know, what are they bringing with them onto the course. And there's usually a lot of performance anxiety that people have, you know, they want to do a good job, they want to work at it.
Yeah.
And if you show only the bits that didn't work for them, it's just going to reinforce that idea that they're not actually doing a very good job, they're not doing very well. And you end up with this kind of negative spiral. So one of the things that I thought was really, you know, a better thing for those guys was to actually tone that stuff down and shine a light more on everything that was working well for them.
Sure.
And I think that, you know, by structuring things, not to give them the big, super hard stuff too early on, you actually encouraged them, you built the confidence in them. They could see that they were doing a good job. Well, they were happy to get in the next day. They were going home on a high. They were resting well. They weren't stressing out. And you would see them raring to go in the morning. Yeah. You know, and that versus someone that's coming in and thinking, look, you know, I don't know if I'm in the right place here. And, you know, I've come all this way and it's not. This is a super hard thing to turn that around for someone.
Yeah.
So definitely being creative about what you do on different days and even for different people, because you have to have them in that happy place to be able to perform. And the more stresses you can take away, well, that's got to be a good thing, hasn't it? You know, there's less distracting that diver.
Absolutely. And another great thing I saw on the course this time round was on day 3, we used a boat.
Yes.
You actually arranged a rib, right?
Yeah.
Which was really cool. So we, very nicely, the guy let us have access to the rib once it was moored up on the dive site.
Yes.
And we were able to get in and out a couple of times. And it really gave the guys an opportunity to practice exits, didn't it, and entrances.
Yeah, I mean, where we are right now, I mean, there's a lot of shore diving. Of course, there's boat diving as well. So where we're doing a different variation of shore entry, whether that's beach, whether that's surf, whether that's ladder, whether that's on a pontoon where we can stand upright, and we're trying to mix up all of those things. The boat thing isn't always available depending on where you are. So I think that the fact that we're in a location where we have a boat, we've got people that are diving here often, so you've got a boat captain that understands what divers are doing.
Sure.
It's not such a long boat ride that we're going to get seasick. It's not such a long boat ride that we're going to be on the boat in the heat. So it's a relatively easy way of doing that. The cool thing for sure is if you can drop them at a site that they couldn't maybe swim to, they get to see something a little bit different. And then of course, you know, you're going to show that actually it's not that difficult to get in side mount. You know, there's this perception that side mount divers on a boat, they take up too much room, they take too long to get in.
Sure.
And, you know, I want to challenge that a bit, you know.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I want people to understand that, you know, you don't always have to stand up while you put your tanks on. You know, people saying, I can't do that dive site because I've got nowhere to put my tanks. I'm like, what do you mean? You put them on your body. What are you talking about? So I think that the more variations that you show and the more that you show when it's working well, that it's easy, it's easily to be done. So yeah, for me, I mean, I'm using it more and more now, and I'm getting much better results from that. You're ending up with a diver that's more confident now that they can go out and make different dives. They can go and take trips to places that maybe they thought, well, I don't want to take my side mount there because, you know, it's going to be too difficult. The boat guys don't want me on the boat. So yeah, I think that it's, you know, if you have the option, if it's available, or even if you can simulate it to a degree, you know, making an entrance, you know, even marking out a spot on a pontoon and saying that's your spot, get in from there. So it doesn't always have to be a drawback. You can still create that environment.
And the two things for me there, one is that the divers, side mount divers, they really need to get good at handling cylinders, don't they? And this exit to boat prep skill or end of dive skill we're always doing now, where we're restowing the long hose, disconnecting a dry suit inflator, preparing the left cylinder for an exit, so that it can be quick, easy and efficient. And we kind of keep it consistent, don't we?
Yes.
In the sense that it doesn't matter if it's a shore dive, boat dive, ladder exit. We're trying to get people buoyancy control right, first of all, because that's the key.
Yes.
And then they're making a very controlled ascent from 5 meters to the surface anyway, taking 5-6 minutes. So during that time, it's a nice time to be able to stow the equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that discipline we're instilling into them is great. So I'm definitely recommending people to be doing this. And I think that's going to avoid a lot of problems, like we say, of divers rushing to the surface with a full side mount gear still dressed, and then being too close to the boat, not being prepared.
Yes.
And I think that's where we're getting this bad message from, actually.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and one of the things that, you know, I'm always sort of continually seeing is taking techniques that worked in back mount and just assuming that they'll work in side mount.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're walking on land with the bottles on, for example, just like we would do in back mount. Yes, it works, but is there a different way? Same about getting back onto a boat. You know, we would surface in back mount first, then we would maybe get out of our unit and hand it up to the boat. Well, yeah, you could do that also in side mount, but if you could do it a better way that's more appropriate, well, that's the bit I want to get at. And because, you know, there is a difference really in people that are diving side mount all over the world on a regular basis and what they'll know and what they'll figured out is a better system. Well, that's what I want to take and that's what I want to transfer, because I mean, I'm the same as you. I don't actually believe that it is any harder in side mount. I don't believe that it needs to be less efficient. You know, I'm reasonably sure I can get in the same time as most other people now. So that's the real key message for me.
Yeah.
And I think that the people that do it as well, I mean, they get to see that. And so when someone says to them, oh no, you can't come on my boat in side mount, well, say, well, actually, yeah, I can, because this is what I've done and this is what I've seen. And it's really about challenging that myth.
Yeah.
But you are right, it is about that initially it's maybe challenging if you're not skilled for it, if you're not trained for it.
Yeah.
So it's taking the time to train with the right people, with the right information, and getting good enough to make it efficient. You can't just do it once.
Yeah.
It needs to be enough times, handling the tanks, stowing the hoses, doing the handoffs, receiving the tanks. You have to do that enough to make that smooth. It's not a one-day job.
No, definitely not. So practicing that regular, so that's something I advise everybody to do.
Yes.
The second is the first thing we just talked about, which is actually having many different types of entrance and exits available.
Yeah.
Even if you've got to simulate, yes, but nicer for the real sites. And to me, even if you spent time not diving, but just doing entrance and exits, or at the end of a day, it's time well spent. Because that's the hang up, isn't it, with side mounts sometimes? Because it's this flexible configuration, it's not already on you.
Yes.
You've got to put it on.
Yeah.
That's when some mistakes and errors can happen, and they can easily be avoided with good training.
Well, I think that's one of the nice things that we do early on, isn't it? When we're finishing day 1, day 2, we're actually saying, all right, well, the dive part may be finished, but we're at the surface now. Let's spend 5-10 minutes. Let's take it off. Let's put it back on. Let's have one teammate maybe talk the other teammate through donning and doffing. So they're each getting that message now of which way around that's going to go. And I think, where we would perhaps then give homework for them to create that, well, no, we can get them to do more of that with each other now, more of that to actually show it.
Yeah.
And you're right, and it's invaluable every dive.
That interaction together, I actually found that when we did that with the guys, I think the process of them telling somebody else the steps,
yes,
it really probably cemented it in their brain that that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, when you teach something, you've got to be good at it yourself, haven't you? And you've got to think a little bit more, because when someone asks you a question, well, you better have the answer.
That's right.
Should it be this hose first or that hose first? Oh, it's got to be that one.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I think that there was a noticeable difference. If you look at the entrances that we did after that day, they were so much more elegant.
Yeah.
And then even when we got to the stopwatch race off,
that
was really interesting.
Well, they were impressive. I mean, a minute and a half.
I think 125, 127, something like that.
This is good. I mean, this is pretty good. For cylinders basically they were on the hips. Air still needed to be turned on, right?
Yes.
And that was it. On you go.
No, I think then when we said, okay, well, let's go and do one of the more challenging entries. We'll go in off the shore. We'll float at the surface. We'll have 3 bottles to put on.
Yeah.
You then look at the efficiency that they now have ready to make that dive because of the prep that's gone into it. And I think, that's really about building not only competence, but confidence that they can go to these places and they can get ready and they can look after themselves.
Yeah, I mean, because we clearly know it works underwater, but you're right, if they're put off by entrance and exits, there's a good chance that they might not want to go.
Yeah,
or might not want to dive.
I think you've got to put that in perspective as well. I mean, there are some dive sites which are physically challenging for other reasons. If you take, for example, the Gozo Rex, it is a steep walk. I don't think that everyone necessarily wants to be walking up and down and carrying kit, but that's the same whether it's in side mount, back mount, single cylinder, dual cylinder. But so it's not necessarily about the army style of entrance. It's much more about, well, there's a floating pontoon here, or there's a soft boat here, or there's a ladder entry on the boat there. It's about those types of variables, because we've all learned to do things like giant stride, for example, which maybe have their drawbacks. So it's really about seeing enough variety in the techniques, but also thinking about it yourself. And that's the bit that I'm really interested in transferring.